Good evening and welcome to the April 19th governing body meeting. If you will give your attention to Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, who will provide the invocation, stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a prayer from the North American indigenous tribe of the Ute. I'll go ahead and say this prayer and then we'll have a moment of silence. Earth, teach me to remember. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring as a mother who secures her young. Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands alone. Earth, teach me limitation as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep in the rain. A moment of silence.
Thank you,
Amen.
Councilwoman. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Alcala,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Kell,
Here.
Nager, here, Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
A little more crowded than I've been in a while, but here.
Lesser. We have 10 present.
Thank you. There are three proclamations this evening. I'll start with the proclamation for Law Day. And Ms. Zimmerman, you're here if you want to join me. Thank you. A proclamation by the mayor. Whereas the preamble of to the United States Constitution mentions forming a more perfect union, first in its list of purposes of the Constitution, and for more than 230 years the government outlined by the U.S. Constitution has maintained representative government based on the rule of law. And whereas over the course of American history, the American people have made changes to their government, including formal amendments to the U.S. Constitution, to fulfill promises of the framers and guarantee rights. And whereas the United States has overcome great challenges in its history, including a civil war, 2 world wars in the 20th century, global pandemics, and periodic economic depressions, and whereas the United States, like much of the world, continues to experience great social change, including social movements for equality for women, ethnic and racial minorities, people with disabilities, and other groups, leading to a growing awareness of systemic sources of oppression. And whereas the creating a more perfect union requires an educated citizenry that understands the rule of law and demonstrates engaged citizenship. And whereas the theme for Law Day 2022 is toward a more perfect union, the Constitution in times of change, we encourage all Americans to consider and purpose the roles that we all play in helping the United States achieve a more perfect union. Now, therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do proclaim May 1st, 2022 as Law Day, and urge everyone to observe the day by renewing their commitment to work to achieve a more perfect union that strengthens our democracy, defends liberty, and pursuit of justice. Congratulations. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, if you wish.
So thank you, everyone. As the Topeka Bar Association, we're very proud to help sponsor the, Law Day in our community with a full-page coloring contest. So look in the Sunday paper on May 1st. And then also, we have a Liberty Bell award that will be coming to the Justice Center as well. Thank you.
Maria Torres Anderson, if you would join me up here, please. And Jessica Barklow. Did I surprise you? Good to see you. A proclamation by the mayor. Whereas National Volunteer Week will be recognized throughout the United States during the week of April 24, 2022, encouraging individuals and groups to be at the center of social change by actively demonstrating their collective power to create positive change within their communities. And whereas volunteer recognition and appreciation has grown consistently in scope every year, drawing support and endorsement from all U.S. presidents, governors, mayors, and respected elected officials, thereby inspiring, recognizing, and encouraging people to seek imaginative ways to engage their communities and truly make a difference in the lives of our citizens. And whereas this open demonstration of support for our volunteers indicate to our community that by working together in unison, we have the fortitude and perseverance to meet our challenges and accomplish community goals in education, income, and health. And whereas by acknowledging this week is not only our opportunity to celebrate our volunteers, but it will also enable our community to share ideas, practices, and stories and shape our image and notion of citizenship as we move into our future. And whereas by living united, we can and will make a better tomorrow through our collective volunteer efforts to impact our community positively and create lasting change. Now, therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do proclaim the week of April 24th through the 30th, 2022, as Volunteer Appreciation Week. In the City of Topeka, Kansas, I encourage all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to support this special effort to strengthen our community. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Do either of you wish to make a comment? Thank you.
As the current president of MOVE, which is an association that engages volunteer coordinators across our community and even outside of Topeka, we just want to say thank you for this. This is a great honor to celebrate and honor our volunteers across our community. And if you are interested in engaging in volunteer but don't really know where to start, I am just going to share a little bit of information with you all. So TopekaVolunteers.org is our online platform that's available for anybody to use for free. And there are opportunities posted all the time, every day, where folks can get involved and get engaged right away. And on April 21st, so this Thursday from 11 to 5:30, if you want to engage with some of our nonprofit partners in the community to learn more about volunteering, we would encourage you to come. It's a free event. Come by, stop in, have some conversations with our nonprofit community, and just really learn about not only their service that they provide to our community, but ways for you to engage as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Jennifer Gassman and Michael Parsons, if you are here. Okay, one of two. A proclamation by the mayor. Whereas the day of April 27th, 2022 will be designated as Drug Endangered Children Awareness Day, and whereas the month of April is Child Abuse Prevention Month and drug endangered children are all at significantly higher risk for abuse and neglect, and whereas it is estimated that more than 8,337 Shawnee County children live in homes where alcohol or other drugs are being abused, and it is estimated that 299 Shawnee County infants are born prenatally exposed to substances every year. And whereas children whose parents or caregivers use drugs are at a higher risk to use drugs themselves. Whereas all parents need to receive information about the effects that drugs and other substances have on their unborn babies and their children and on their judgment and parenting abilities. And whereas the statewide Kansas Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, along with the Shawnee County Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, invite all residents of the city of Topeka to participate in Drug Endangered Children Awareness Day. Now, therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of Topeka, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, April 27th, 2022 as Drug Endangered Children's Day in the city of Topeka. Thank you for your work. I appreciate that. Bring it to
I'd just like to thank you for helping to bring attention to the issue of drug endangered children and the risks that these children face, as well as the supports and services that our group is working to provide families with so that all children can grow up in a safe and healthy home environment.
Thank you for everything you do. Appreciate it. Read, if you would read.
Agenda item 3A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Scott Humans to the Topeka Metropolitan Transit Authority for a term ending May 1st, 2026.
This is a constituent in Council District Number 7. Councilman, would you wish to make a motion or a comment?
I will move approval. Thank you, Mayor.
Move to approve by Councilman Dobler, second by Councilwoman Nager. If you will call the roll.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see.
Quick question, not about this specific appointment, but a clarification. This is a reappointment to the board. Is there currently an empty seat on this board?
I believe there is one.
Okay, I just wanted, okay, just clarifying that. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll, please.
Council members Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala.
Yes.
We have 9 voting yes. Motion carries.
Motion's carried. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, presentations. Mr. City Manager. I looked over there for you, but I have it.
Yes, this is, if you remember, a while back, the governing body wanted presentations from our different committees, and so that series continues. Tonight, we have Mr. Blevins with Public Works, who is our ADA advisor, and they'll be doing their report. So at that point, Mr. Blevins.
Good evening, members of the governing body. I would like to introduce Steve Schoenberg, and he is the chair of the ADA Advisory Council.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the Topeka City Council. I am Steve Schoenberg, I am the chair of the ADA Advisory Council, and I'm pleased to present to you tonight. I'm presenting the report from 2020 and 2021 advisory report.
If you just try talking into it.
Is that any better? Oh, there we go. You want me to start again, or is this okay? You want me to keep going, or I need to go back? Okay. The presentation tonight is going to talk about our accomplishments for the past 2 years and also what we're going to be doing for the next 4 years. We're also going to be asking for a full-time ADA coordinator. But first, a little bit about ourselves and why we have the authority to be here tonight. We are a 10-member board of Topeka citizens, volunteers that you appointed by the Topeka governing body. At least 6 of the 10 members must have a disability in one or more of the following categories: that impaired life functions, vision, hearing, mobility, speech development, and social. The Advisory Council was established under City Code 2.80 in the years after the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. That was in 1990, and it guarantees equal opportunity for individuals with disabilities in the 5 sections: with public accommodation, employment, transportation, state and local government services, and telecommunications. The function of the ADA Advisory Committee falls primarily within the scope of the section City and State Government Services. Our mission, as outlined in the City Code, is in part to enhance the community by contributing factors of persons with disabilities, and to work towards providing full access to facilities, programs, services, and employment, and to enable a person with disabilities to equally participate in the economic life of the city. So for the past 2 years, we've been working on various issues. We have included that information in the packet that's in front of you now, and it's there for your revision. The ADA Advisory Council member Joe Charest will now present to you our top accomplishments for the last 2 years and the goals for 2022. Joe.
Sorry.
Greetings, Mayor and City Council. Our top 3 accomplishments of 2020 are: 1, we met with the Kansas Emergency Management Division regarding notifying those with disabilities, including the deaf and hard of hearing, and the blind or low vision individuals, about community emergencies such as tornadoes. This meeting was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. 2, we helped provide COVID-19 response information to those with disabilities through proper channels. 3, we promoted and assisted those with disabilities in filling out the 2020 census and technical assistance for public service announcements, PSAs, produced by City 4 for Topeka's government channel. Our top 3 accomplishments of 2021 are: 1, we administered an accessible parking survey during the month of June, seeking the public's input perceptions regarding accessible parking, both on public and private property. 311 responses were received. The biggest obstacles were other vehicles parking too close. Several complained about improper use of accessible stalls, including store security trailers and those without accessible hang tags or license plates. 2, we formed standing committees to work towards accomplishing annual goals. Committees cover such topics as accessible parking availability and issues, training for law enforcement officers about how to handle point of contact with individuals with disabilities, emergency management, and a public recognition process for those who have a disability and for those who support those with disabilities. And 3, we responded promptly to many ADA accessibility concerns and involving situations brought to our attention by the public. Our top 3 goals for 2022 are: 1, successfully advocate for and assist in successfully hiring a full-time ADA coordinator for the city of Topeka. 2, improve accessible parking opportunities in Topeka using results of the 2021 ADA Accessible Parking Survey implemented by the ADA Advisory Council. 3, continue to review the scope and degree of current local law enforcement training for officers who communicate at the point of contact with those with disabilities. Our request for a full-time equivalency position. Members of the current ADA Advisory Council would like to request a position for a full-time ADA coordinator. The job of the coordinator would be to plan, manage, and oversee the ADA compliance activities outlined in the city's ADA transition plan. ADA issues include, but are not limited to, the following: ensuring sidewalks and curb cuts are accessible, ensuring all city-owned properties are accessible, resolving complaints about ADA issues, assisting employers with providing reasonable accommodations in the workplace, such as braille signage, raised desks, screen reader software, ASL interpreters, and policy and procedure modifications. Training city employees who provide a service to the public about disability sensitivity and providing accommodations to disabled customers. Ensuring all city communications and documents are accessible, such as braille, large print, ASL interpretation, captioning, and plain language. Monitoring changes to various programming and services that affect those with disabilities and have a seat at the table to help find solutions. This concludes our presentation, and we thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight, and we stand for questions.
Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both for presenting. At this point, we do not have the ADA coordinator. With how we are structured as a city at this point, who deals with the issues that would fall under the ADA coordinator title?
That would be the city engineer.
Okay.
As well, actually, it is Public Works Director, city engineer.
Okay, and how do you see the ADA coordinator really adding to that role, adding to our responsiveness as a city?
I think that it would be most important to have a full-time ADA coordinator to deal with everyday issues that come up to the city. Our advisory council, we meet just once a month, and so we have a very small chance to take care of these important issues that come up. And some of them are going to be permanent. We want a point of contact in the city that can work on cases like this. That's something that, you know, they can confront every day, and we only have a chance to do so once a month.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body? Thank you for your presentation.
And thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
We have another, excuse me, presentation, City Manager. Yeah, at this time, this is exciting for us. This is going to be an update on the Polk Quincy Viaduct project that we are working with KDOT on. I will be providing the governing body with a financial report tomorrow or the day after. So tonight's presentation, what we really want to concentrate on is really the project itself, updates, and all that good stuff. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Brian Armstrong, who is here as the engineer of the project, and he has plenty of support staff from KDOT to answer any questions that you may have specifically to the project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to be here. Just wanted to introduce the rest of our team here tonight. Greg Gonzalez is the project manager on the KDOT team. Also from KDOT tonight, Kate Kraft, Debbie Tanking, and Steve Ballman. All have been involved in the project. Some of them from the very beginning, so a lot of historical knowledge in the room tonight. Just want to touch on our design team as well. Bartlett and West, I'm the project manager for the overall design team. WSP is also on the design team, designing the viaduct and helping with some of the maintenance of traffic plans. Finney and Turnipseed is helping with the Topeka Boulevard Bridge widening, and Architect One is our architect helping with some of the renderings that you'll see as a part of the presentation. Just agenda for tonight, just some of the things we want to give you an update on. We've been working really hard to get a better understanding of what the final concept looks like, and then a lot of time into how we build the project, how we minimize I-70 closure, and we have a lot of details that I think we're really confident on now, and we're moving towards final design. So the design concept we want to touch on, ground improvements, the areas that we're going to need to do some work before we build fill for the new sections, because we're shortening the viaduct. Let me go back one. Yeah, there we go. The overall construction timeline and how we're going to build the project. The demolition project, which is getting ready to start this summer. I'll give an update on right-of-way, and then on the utility coordination side, we have a private and then a City of Topeka component for storm and sanitary and water. We want to talk a little bit on the neighborhoods west of Topeka Boulevard, and then some of the sidewalks, shared use paths, bike lanes that we built into the project, and then public involvement efforts, and then what our final schedule looks like to get to construction. So the overall design concept, this is the downtown part of the project. Our project really starts at McVicker on the west end. We're going to reconstruct I-70 from 2 lanes each direction and widen it out so that it's 3 lanes each direction from McVicker to Topeka Boulevard. The new viaducts, which are the elevated bridges, are shown in yellow. Let's see if my mouse goes. Are shown in yellow. The new viaducts go from Topeka Boulevard to Kansas Avenue. And there's 2 viaducts now instead of 1. Each has 2 lanes in each direction. Each has inside and outside full width shoulders on each of the bridges. So a lot wider, a lot more room for snow removal, a lot safer than what we have now. And then the interchange concept for our project, in blue are ramps. So in blue, we have an eastbound off-ramp from I-70 that has a direct connection to Topeka Boulevard. And then from Topeka Boulevard, we have a westbound on-ramp. Again, those ramps are multiple lanes, so we've added capacity to get cars on and off the interstate quicker. We've added lanes on Topeka Boulevard for the same reason. From Kansas Avenue, we have the other half of the interchange. From Kansas Avenue, you'll be able to get back on the eastbound I-70. And if you're coming westbound on I-70, you'll be able to get off onto the frontage road to Kansas Avenue. So those 4 ramps kind of make the split diamond interchange concept. And our project then goes, we have 2 new bridges over 4th Street, and then our project will end somewhere between 4th Street and 6th Street. This is the west half of the overall I-70 project that we started with 5 years ago. We split it in half back then based on, the complexity and the overall cost. And then this project was prioritized to be first, basically because of bridge condition. The condition of the viaduct, the need to replace it now, really made that the priority. And then the east project still has bridge issues that will lead it to be considered in the future for the next project as we get done with this one. So ground improvements, I mentioned, so the reason it's called a Polk-Quincy Viaduct right now, it starts at Polk Street and it ends at Quincy. We're going to make that a lot shorter. And so to make the viaducts shorter, the bridges, we have to ramp up the interstate 25 feet in the air so that we can match the new bridge. So the ground under those areas adjacent to the river is some pretty unstable soil. So we're going to have to do a lot of work underground to build stability up so that we can build all the dirt and retaining walls on top. That really put a challenge into the construction timeline and schedule, and we spent a lot of time working on those details and have a good understanding now of what that looks like. KDOT's geotechnical team has done a lot of work on options for underground and what best is going to help stabilize everything and get us ready for all of the construction on top. So those we have a good handle on. So just a few things on the overall construction schedule. One of the really cool things that the design team has built into the construction schedule, we really had a focus on trying to get access to people that work downtown. So if you were coming from the east and you were coming west to downtown, you still could get off at 10th Street or 8th Street. You still had access to get downtown even when the project was going on. It was coming eastbound that really you ran into McVicker, and then you were going to have to get off and go down McVicker into 6th Street to get downtown. And that was going to put a lot of stress on McVicker and 6th Street. So the final plan now, from McVicker, we're going to have one lane eastbound to Topeka Boulevard, and then from Topeka Boulevard, you'll be able to get back westbound on the interstate all the way back to McVicker. So from that side of town, you're going to be able to get downtown to work and get back home all using the interstate. And the same access from North Topeka, you'll be able to get from North Topeka southbound and get back on the interstate as well. So that really helped the overall traffic impacts during construction, and I think it'll really help access to downtown. I-70 traffic, big picture, is going to be detoured from the very beginning of the project using I-470 and the Turnpike. And by through traffic, we mean people that, if you're going from Manhattan to Lawrence, there's no need to go through downtown. We're going to detour those people from the very beginning. Then we also have a truck traffic detour for those coming eastbound that want to get trucks to downtown. And I'll show some graphics on that, but really wanted to make sure we didn't have truck traffic trying to weave their way through town and provide them a safe route to get there. I-70 closure, this is what we also really focused on to try to minimize this as much as possible. So the actual time that I-70 is closed, basically to tear down the existing viaduct, finish one of the new ones, and get it back open, that's going to be in the second year of construction. So early spring to early fall of that second year is the I-70 closure. And then the first thing we're going to open back up, then we'll have the eastbound I-70 lanes with one lane in each direction open back up. And that's the critical timeline. KDOT is being very open, looking at innovative ways to bid the project and incentives for contractors. We've met ahead of time with several major contractors that have the ability to build something like this and got input from them on flexibility, giving them open areas to work, and all of them said incentivizing the I-70 closure time would really be a way to get them to put all of their forces on it and try to minimize the time that we have it closed. So just 4 slides, 2 for each year of construction, just to kind of give you a little picture of what's going on. So this is the very beginning of the project. Yellow are the new viaducts that are going to be under construction. Red is what's under construction on the roadway side, and green are things that are constructed. But as we talked about, one of the first things is providing a temporary westbound ramp to get access to the interstate open so that we can build the middle part. And then we'll start building the eastbound off-ramp, and then half of Topeka Boulevard in that first year. The second half of that first year, we're going to focus on building the other half of Topeka Boulevard. So basically, through traffic on Topeka Boulevard is closed in year one. We still have access southbound to the interstate. And then as we have the eastbound off-ramp open, then we can close the 3rd Street off-ramp, and that allows us to start building some of the interstate between 2nd Street and 4th Street. And we can start building some of the 4th Street bridge and working on that in year one. Year two, the beginning of year two is the big impact year. We're shutting down I-70 to remove the viaduct, finish the eastbound viaduct and the connections on either side. And once we have that, the ability to open back up traffic on I-70, we'll switch to essentially finishing everything that's left. That'll be a lot of the side streets and frontage roads that are in that second year. At that point, then we should be able to switch to getting the interstate open in both directions. So talked a little bit about detours. This is the overall detour for through traffic. So it'll use I-470 and then the turnpike back to the east side. That'll be in place the whole time. We also have a special detour route if you were trying to go northbound on K4. We wanted to give them a detour route that didn't have to use the turnpike. So that'll be US 75 to US 24 to K4, a free detour route for those people. And then I talked about the truck traffic detour. So if you were coming eastbound and wanted to get to downtown, we're going to send you 470 and the turnpike to the East Topeka interchange, and then back on I-70 to get to downtown. So the demolition project, one of the first things you're going to see, KDOT has already had a bid letting and has a contractor on board, or getting a contractor on board. The area between Topeka Boulevard on the west and Kansas Avenue on the east, from 1st Street to 2nd Street. That core area is the demolition project. KDOT and their right-of-way team are focusing on properties in that area. And the reason we're focusing on that is to get those properties cleared, and then the Kansas State Historical Preservation Office, their investigation underground will commence at that point. So as we get a property cleared, depending on which one, but they have the ability then to start doing their underground investigation to finish the environmental process. And that's what you'll see starting as early as July of this summer, as some of that starts to happen. Jackson Street through the middle of that will remain open the whole time. We've reconstructed Jackson Street in the last decade with large storm sewer projects, so it'll be open, but the rest of that area will be a part of the demolition project. Touched on right away, so the picture below is kind of the demolition area. Most of the tracks have been appraised for the entire project. Some offers have been made. Some of those have accepted, and it's probably even higher than that at this point. And the remainder, the KDOT and their right-of-way team and consultants are working on negotiating with the remaining properties. Utility coordination, so I mean we're shifting the viaducts north. We're making them shorter. We're doing underground ground improvements. So there's a lot of utilities impacted. On the city side, the city is focusing their water, stormwater, and sanitary relocation needs all into one bid package early next year in 2023. That will give that contractor all of next year in 23 and part of 2024 to get those utilities moved and out of the way. We've been working with Evergy and Kansas Gas and Cox and fiber companies, all that are impacted and we'll continue to help them coordinate on where their new utilities will go and make sure that everything's communicated and that everyone understands where the other relocations have to happen. Evergy has two main north-south transmission lines, one around Polk Street west of Topeka Boulevard that goes north-south. The other is about Harrison. It goes over the viaduct, so they have to build a new transmission line that not only spans the existing viaduct, but the two new viaducts at the same time, because all three will be in place for a while before we tear down the existing. So they're coordinating some of that design process now. All utilities, July 2024 is the target date for relocation for everyone. And that's to, as we get into the bidding process, to make sure the contractor has a good confidence level that everything's out of the way and he's going to have a clean area to work in. So I got one slide on each of the city utilities real quickly. Stormwater, there's a large 96-inch around Polk Street. It's part of a permitted CSO for the city. That's going to be a new box, 8 foot by 8 foot reinforced concrete box. It's going to have to go under. It'll be 10 foot underground until we put another 20 feet on top of it. So it's going to be a very structurally sound structure. And then we have to do a little bit of storm work on 4th Street. Again, just because of the ground improvement areas, that'll set that up to work in with the rest of the proposed storm system, but most of the storm is with the actual project. This is sanitary, and there's green basically are our new sanitary lines. Orange are ones that we're getting rid of that are impacted by the viaducts and footings and ground improvement areas. So a big part of that is again, part of that CSO, there's an interceptor along 2nd Street that'll go then north to Crane Street and tie in with that, and then other parts and pieces and alleys and Kansas Avenue and 4th Street and Monroe areas. Same with water, not quite as extensive, but water does have in green and blue new lines, and in orange the lines that are in conflict that we're going to abandon and get rid of. But just a little graphic view of the city impacts. So just a couple slides talking about the neighborhood and street network west of Topeka Boulevard. We are, big picture for the entire project, WSP has a draft now of a traffic impact study that looks at the impacts of what happens during construction and impacts to local street networks. But in particular, just talking about this neighborhood, specifically because 1st Street right now has a direct connection to Topeka Boulevard. Some of the neighborhood use that east-west to access Topeka Boulevard and the rest of downtown. With our project, the eastbound off-ramp basically cuts off 1st Street. So it will stop at between Taylor and Polk, and it'll basically just be a local street at that point. So then just thinking about how do people in that neighborhood access Topeka Boulevard, and how is traffic going to flow? I mean, it's probably very dependent on where you live in that neighborhood. I think 1st Street east-west really isn't a through route anymore. And that may be to the benefit of some of those that live on that route. But just highlighted some of the infrastructure in that neighborhood. So Topeka Boulevard itself, we're going to have new traffic signals at each of the frontage roads. There's an existing traffic signal at 3rd Street, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So a lot of signalized intersections to get access from the west. 3rd Street is just a two-way street, but 4th Street and 5th Street are one-way collectors, 2 lanes in each direction. So a lot of people going westbound could take 4th Street to get into the neighborhood, and then take 5th Street to get out of the neighborhood, and then of course 6th Street on the south as a minor arterial. So just kind of a quick review of there is a good infrastructure in that neighborhood. I think that'll help get people in and out. So back 5 years ago, we didn't have a lot of sidewalks and pedestrian connectivity built into the project, but KDOT has been very accommodating, listening to the city of Topeka, gave a list of things they would hope to include in the project as we got started back up, and I think every single one of those is now incorporated into the design. So let me just touch on frontage roads to start with. So adjacent to the project from Topeka Boulevard, there's going to be, as shown in blue, there's going to be a parallel frontage road all the way from Topeka Boulevard eastbound to 4th Street, and from 4th Street westbound all the way to Topeka Boulevard. Adjacent to those, there's going to be a 10-foot shared use path. So we'll have a 10-foot sidewalk that does a circle lap around essentially the entire project. We've added a 10-foot shared use path along the eastbound off-ramp to try to keep some connectivity of the 1st Street bikeway that used to have more direct connection. So we're trying to keep at least a way for that bikeway to stay in place. We have added on-street bike lanes on Van Buren. It's part of an identified bike corridor. We have the Capitol on the south end of that corridor. And then 4th Street also is a City of Topeka identified bikeway. So we have on-street bike lanes as a part of 4th Street also. So a lot of bike and ped considerations built in. Public involvement. So we've been trying to get to this point in the design where we can share this information with everyone. We wanted to get this information to the governing body first before it went live to anywhere else. It is now live on our website, polkquincy.org. Had a major update to that today. This presentation and frequently asked questions document and some of the historical information are all updated and available on there. And then really we're going to be able to get out now in the community and share this message some more with, we have a lot of neighborhood groups that have been waiting for an update. We've promised them one in the spring of this year, and we're there now. So we'll start coordinating with some of them to meet on a little smaller group level and have the ability to share some of these things and answer some of their questions. So big picture schedule. We talked about the demolition project that's getting underway now, and that's going to get started in June, July of this year. We talked about utility relocations and their due date in July of 24. That's the same timeline for final design. Will be finished in the July of 2024 range. And then big picture, the letting to bid the project and get a contractor in October of 2024. And that'll lead us to 2025 and 2026 construction. We will have more and more updates to renderings. You see one here, but our Architect One partner is building an entire 3D model that we can see what's going on under the viaducts and from any angle, and I think it's going to really help people understand a little bit more of what the project's going to look like. That would be glad to answer any questions.
Questions from the body, Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. If I can ask a couple for clarification. One, there were points along the way where you talked about year 1, year 2, and year 3. And does that translate to 2024, 25, and 26?
So we have 2 years of construction, 2025 and 2026.
Right. There were places where you called it year 1, year 2, year 3, and I just want to make sure we were all clear on.
2 years of construction.
And so you expect to be done by the end of 2026?
We do.
Thank you. Also, to clarify, you gave us lots of detail, which is really great. But for those of us that just kind of want to know whether our exit's still going to be there, correct me if I'm wrong, the 10th Street on and off ramps will still exist. 8th Street on and off ramps will still exist. but there will no longer be anything in the 3rd and 4th Street area. Everybody will get on and off and have a long loop, heading east anyway, but it's first in Kansas and first in Topeka for the most part, and then back on to the normal array of exits that we have.
Correct.
Okay. And with the decisions finally about the neighborhoods west of the boulevard, you said you're going to build some service ramps for the construction period, but when do you expect First Street to be cut off?
So First Street will be impacted a little next year in 2023. I mentioned the storm sewer project that's going to have to cross First Street, so a period of the summer construction next year. But really from the very beginning of 2025, First Street that area west of Topeka Boulevard will be a part of the original, the early project efforts to build the eastbound off-ramp, and First Street will close. So from the beginning of the project, it will close and then it will remain closed.
Thank you, and if I can ask one more short one.
Yes.
Driving back in from seeing family for Easter, I noticed, maybe for the first time, there's a big sign that says something like no tall trucks on 470. And so it seems that is there a low bridge that's going to cause problems for the cross-country trucks?
I'd like to phone a friend for that question. Mr. Steve Bolt.
I-470, the turnpike portion of I-470 does have some lower bridges. The turnpike is working on that. The standard interstate size loads will not have an issue with it. It's just oversized, overweight type loads that may find themselves more restricted from what their normal path is. And believe it or not, actually the current I-70 to the east of downtown has at least one low bridge that already restricts oversized, overweight that are too tall. So again, I'd like to phone a friend and get that. But that's generally what they're talking about. Yeah, it's a process they're working on system in to system in from Wichita all the way up to here. It will not be in place entirely by the time this project starts, but it won't necessarily restrict normal trucking loads. So does that answer the question?
I think so. I would assume at this point that somebody who's driving over the road has a GPS that tells them all these things.
Oversized loads have to be permitted through every state, and so their path is already chosen before they enter the state.
Okay.
So they should not be on these routes.
We've all seen those horrible pictures, so I was just checking. Thank you.
Councilman Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the very exciting presentation per the city manager's promise. If you are a community organization that wants to find out more about this or figure out if your group is already scheduled to meet with you guys, is the best way to just reach out to your community group itself, or would that be a good question to pose through the polkquincy.com website?
So on the website, there's an email and phone number.
Okay.
The email address probably would be the best way to just send that request in, and then we can communicate that to the rest of the team. The phone number actually rings to my phone also, so we'll use the email address. But yeah, either of those are good options to let us know that you'd like to talk some more about the project.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. On the last map you showed us that had roads, sidewalks, bikeway, there was one that was black called proposed structures. Can you define what a proposed structure is and what those black boxes were?
So the proposed, I'm trying to think in black. Okay.
Yeah, it was black. It was on the very last map. It was on the very last.
Coming back.
All right.
Very last one,
Yeah, that one right
sure.
there.
And it says proposed structures, and it's got black lines underneath.
So in this case, it's the new viaduct bridges are shown in black through the middle.
So the structures are the bridge.
Yeah, in this case, structures are bridges. That they could have been some of the utilities, but Yeah, correct. Those are the two new viaduct bridges.
Okay. And then my second question is, and this came up in a meeting I was in today with Councilwoman Hiller, actually, so I will pass along this, both I am curious and think it needs to be addressed, but also, and this is, I guess, to the collective of everybody working on this project, but you're standing there, so I'll shoot it at you first. But as this project goes and when it's completed, there will be, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it open spaces around this project, whether it's around it, whether it's under it, wherever. Is anybody having any coordinated or even slightly uncoordinated conversations about what we as a city or whoever has that property can and will put into those areas so we can coordinate it as we're building this project? Or at least are we having conversations about areas we will be able to utilize and what the rules will be so we can talk about utility placements now instead of getting into that after the fact? I mean, part of the reason we're doing this isn't just safety, but it's beautification and access to our riverfront and downtown. So I guess that is the question to whoever wants to tackle that one.
I gotta let Greg get involved a little.
You've been talking your head off, Greg.
No. And so with, for example, things underneath the viaduct, there would need to be some interest from a community group, for instance. And from there, they would need to coordinate with the city, for which then the city would coordinate with KDOT. And then to put things underneath our viaduct, we would have to get approval with the federal highways and get coordination with them going too. And so really that funding source would need to be identified from the beginning, because really KDOT doesn't build those type of facilities as part of our projects.
So then the process needs to start with us. So for anyone who's interested and wondering where that it needs to start with us as a city, and then we need to work our way through KDOT and the feds to get that. But that helps, because I think that was some of the confusion. Where do we start the conversation and how do we move it forward? And you don't have to answer this now. My last question will be, at some point, and if you or send us this or we can talk, what will be the timeline when those decisions need to be made? I mean, again, I won't hold you to your answer now, but I mean, a year from now, 6 months from now, I mean, I know you're all trying to get it done as we move, but I mean.
I would think probably the sooner the better.
Okay.
As we just kind of progress through final design on the project, it would be better to kind of know what kind of ideas people have and what the intentions are for local community on what they wish for in those places.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Armstrong, I'd like to ask you some questions about airport leasing. I won't.
Just had that board meeting, so ready to go.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say, it's obvious you guys have put a lot of thought into this, trying to accommodate the public and keep things moving. I really appreciate all the work you guys have done on this. And I really appreciate that KDOT, it looks to me like they went the extra mile to incorporate things that the city was asking. So really appreciate that. Good work.
Thank you.
Further questions? I would like to also compliment you, Brian and Greg, for the work that you've done. I know that we've had those meetings with council members and myself, and it really looks like you've really done an excellent job of considering how it will impact the neighborhood and relieving any congestion and making it easier to live with until we get the final product. So my compliments to both of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
No further questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda number 5, if the clerk would read.
Item 5A is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran, removing certain real property from the Dynamic Core Redevelopment District. Item B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Christina Valdivia Acala, approving a special event known as the Caw Valley Bank Noto Party. Item C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Christina Valdivia Acala, granting Caw Valley Bank an exception to the provisions of the City of Topeka Code Section 9.45.150 concerning noise prohibitions. Item D is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran, naming banks and savings institutions that are designated as depositories for all City of Topeka accounts and authorizing signatories and rescinding City of Topeka Resolution Number 9286. Item E is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran authorizing the City of Topeka's participation in the Kansas Municipal Investment Pool and authorizing signatories and rescinding City of Topeka Resolution Number 9285. Item F is resolution introduced by Deputy Mayor Spencer Duncan announcing the members of the 2022 Redistricting Commission. Item G are minutes of the regular meeting of April 12th, 2022, and there are no applications.
Thank you. We've heard the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Councilwoman Nager, seconded by Councilman Kell. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Council members Emerson,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 10 voting yes, motion carries.
Motion carried, and we'll move on to agenda item number 6, if the clerk would read.
Item 6A is a charter ordinance introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran regarding issuance of general obligation bonds, amending Charter Ordinance 89, Section 1, as codified at Section A12-1 of the Topeka Municipal Code.
City manager.
This is an action item, and we have Mr. Steve Wade, Finance Director, available. If anybody has any questions, reference this.
Any questions for Mr. Wade? Seeing none, entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Councilman Emerson, second by Councilwoman Nager. Good seeing you in that.
You get called on more.
I keep looking up there. Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Council members Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson.
Yes.
We have 10 voting yes. Motion carries.
Motion carried. We move on to item 6B, if the clerk would read, please.
Item 6B is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran, authorizing improvement project number T-1098.00 that provides for sanitary sewer improvement for 660 Northeast Highway 24 as more specifically described herein.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, this is an action item as well. And again, it's a sanitary sewer improvement for 660 Northeast Highway 24. We do have Mr. Copley available for any questions to be answered if there is any from the governing body.
Questions from the governing body on this item? Seeing none, I entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Councilman Lesser. A second motion to approve is by Councilwoman Valdivia Akala. If you'll call the roll, please.
Council members Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
We have 10 voting yes. Motion carries.
Motion being carried, we move to item 6C, if the clerk would read.
Item 6C is a motion to temporarily suspend Rule 8.2 and appoint a fourth governing body member to the Public Health and Safety Committee.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, again, this is an action item. This was a discussion last week. Recommendation I made referenced the workload that this committee has on it right now, and the recommendation was to add a fourth member. And if I remember right, our gracious deputy mayor agreed to fill that position.
Step forward, yeah.
This is an action item, and we do stand to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions? Entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Councilwoman Nager, second by Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. If you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Ortiz, Emerson,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
We have 10 voting yes, motion carries.
Motion carried. Move on to item 6D, if the clerk would read.
Item 6D is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Spencer Duncan supporting serious discussion and consideration of reducing mill levies for budget year 2023 by the city and other taxing subdivisions in light of significant property value increases.
And if I'm correct, we have two people signed up to speak on this item. First is Mr. Vic Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This resolution prompted my appearance, but I actually started preparing remarks regarding this subject last September when I read the headline in the Capital Journal quoting my council member, that she was really proud we were not raising taxes in Topeka. Sadly, that's not the case. The budget that was adopted last fall, while holding the mill levy steady, raised property taxes this year from $45,351,000 last year to $49,077,000 this year, or an 8.2% increase. We need to be careful about tossing this mill levy out as holding the line on taxes. It's not necessarily the case, as I just indicated. Yes, the city's mill levy remained constant last year while you raised property taxes $3.7 million. I don't know if it's more disappointing that my veteran council member either didn't understand that or deliberately misled the taxpayers that was happening. This resolution is just as dangerous. There's language in the resolution on line 14 indicating that because mill levies determine the amount of property taxes that will be due. No, mill levies do not determine the amount of property taxes that will be due. Spending indicates what your taxes will be. The mill levy is simply a derivative of how much you choose to spend. And then the mill levy is established as calculated against assessed valuation to produce the necessary property taxes that you adopt in your budget. It's a simple formula. You need to be careful when it comes to spending and hiding behind a mill levy. City expenditures have gone a startling $267 million 2 years ago. $267 million 2 years ago to $339 million that you adopted in last year's budget. That's found on page 26, by the way, of your online budget. That is a staggering 27% increase in spending in just 2 years. More so, expenditures, and this is found on page 30 of your online budget, expenditures exceeded revenue last year by $40 million. In addition to raising property taxes 8%, you dipped into reserves $40 million after doing so the year before to the tune of $29 million. If you want to say something to the taxpayers in this resolution, don't talk about the obvious, and that is you can reduce your mill levy when valuations go up 13.5%. Tell them that you're serious about reducing spending so that it is not necessary to raise property taxes under the guise of lowering the mill levy. I'd stand for questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Rowley. No questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Second person signed up was Mr. Joe Ledbetter.
Thank you, everybody. I agree with some of what was said previously, but I've agreed about some of that for many years. I've talked about reducing spending or controlling costs, controlling and making sure we're getting benchmarks and productivity. All those words that I've used at previous budgets have absolutely talked about controlling spending, especially with population decline, which was not mentioned. We must look at that and understand that spending is key to what we do down here if we're going to control costs. And the main thing that I'm concerned about is that this city remain affordable. I've got, one of my sons just got a 40% valuation increase in a very nice neighborhood, and he's going, Dad, are you serious? I said, I'm not serious. I'm not doing this. I said, I'll help you argue that, but this city has to remain affordable to our families. He's got kids, a wife, and he's just one of many. Many of your constituents are just like that. They're facing some very stiff potential, I said potential, valuation increases. So I do support this, but only making sure that we actually follow through. That's a key word. We have to follow through with what we're doing tonight if you vote for this, and make sure that we are really holding the line on spending and making sure that it's not unnecessary. Now, that doesn't mean that we underfund our police or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. But we are getting a lot more in sales tax now. We need to realize that. We're almost getting a windfall with inflation. Inflation's eating people alive. And it's not just my family or my son's families. It's families all across the city that are paying also a lot on that. And of course, this doesn't talk about that. But do you want me to talk about water rates? I think they've gone through the roof. And that wasn't mentioned, but I'll mention it. We need to control all of our raising of any cost, and we need to make sure we are doing a very fiduciary duty type of analysis of how we spend money. So I do support this, but I don't look at this as a Band-Aid. It's going to take more work to implement it correctly, and so I'm looking forward to that process and speaking about the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to this item?
Sure, Mayor. Thank you. We talked about this somewhat extensively last week. I won't rehash any of my thoughts on why I've brought it forward. It's funny that we continue to be boxed in, and we find ourselves always playing defense. The legislature takes away tools from our toolbox without giving us anything else to put back in it. They give us not too complicated, but we will make a choice later this year whether we go above or not revenue neutral. That's one way to hold the line. I had this conversation with a constituent not too long ago, and I asked me why I look at the mill levy maybe as opposed to revenue neutral. And my answer was, not only can I control the mill levy a little more, but we don't reduce mill levies. I don't know if the city's ever reduced it, done an actual vote at this table to reduce the actual mill levy. Maybe it has, it'd be interesting to find that stat up. But once they go up, governments don't tend to actually help them go down. It is one tool we have to at least give people relief. But I believe we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I don't think just doing that solves the problem. I think we can reduce parts of our budget and reduce the mill levy and find ways to help our citizens who are faced with higher valuations, which we don't control. That's over on the county side. So we can only sort of do what we can do, and that's why, at least as we go through the budget process, want to put it in front of the governing body to be able to say, this is one tool, I'd like it to be part of our budget packages and our discussion and see where it can go. But I don't think doing this, I've never viewed this as a singular option for dealing with all the sort of issues we have in front of us as we walk through the budget. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments from the council? Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to tread real carefully in this area because my brain just felt like it got all scrambled with what was just stated. And I think my deepest concern about this is that I would hate to vote for something that I'm not saying that I don't want to be trying to shell game the people. And I don't think that that's intentional, but I just got really confused with what was just said. And I'm not afraid to admit it because I understand that I'm still learning. But if there's been like, what, a 13.5% increase, and so if doing this reduction in the mill levy doesn't sound like it would really do anything because we have this huge increase that's occurred. So I just don't know how to make this one feel like it fits. So I know we're voting on it tonight. I just didn't know if anybody else was kind of like confused and wanted to help explain stuff. But thank you, Mayor.
Well, I would encourage the council to ask as many questions as they want right now. This is what this is for, this discussion piece, to get us to a point where either we are comfortable with it or not. I want to emphasize, at least for my part, I keep going back to urge consideration of reducing. This is not, as I understand it, a commitment that we will do that, and that's kind of what I've been reading in the paper, and it says we will do this, and I don't see that in your resolution. Am I misunderstanding, Deputy Mayor?
No, sir, and I've been very clear whenever I've talked to media or put anything out on social media or sat in this chamber or even talked to colleagues one-on-one to say that is not the intent of this resolution. I've also been very transparent that I, at least as we look at numbers, may come to this body and say, hey, now that we've got all this information in front of us, so Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala is absolutely correct. This is not intended to be a shell game. And that needs to be very clear to everybody sitting here today. My intent is not to say to people, I'm doing this to make you feel better, and then we're not going to talk about it anymore. My intent is so that we have this information in front of us so that we can make a serious consideration of making this a feasible option for us come budget time. My intent is sincere. We may absolutely have some disagreements as to whether that's the right or wrong decision, and I'm ready for that and look forward to that, and that's exactly should be part of the process. But yes, this resolution is specifically laid out there to say, let's just make it a part of the discussion through this process, but it commits nobody to saying they will or won't when the time comes.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ager and then Councilwoman, oh, he did. Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I would request then, Steve, that we set up a meeting so we can go over this more, you and I, to any questions that I have in this learning journey, so I can get a clearer head as we lead into these discussions. So I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just trying to get this straight, man. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I can't even remember what I said last week, but I'm concerned about the shell game thing as well. We all know, at least I think we all know, that our mill levy is mid-level in terms of the cities of our size in the state. We get slammed all the time that our levy is high, but we have a local university that has its own, we have Metro that has its own, we have an airport that has its own, plus the county, of course, and the state and other places that get that money. And so again, the headline was illogical, I guess, running with something that's supposed to say, well, we'll just talk about it, but people think differently. In the discussion about encouraging these other entities, I got a call from a constituent this morning that suggested that maybe with the state's coffers a little more flush than they've been, that this would be a good time for us to work with Washburn University to take a run at being a Regents University. They've done that before and haven't been successful. But looking at actually taking something off people's tax bill, if that's what we want to do. So my question to you, if I may, to you is, were you expecting that you or someone on behalf of all of us would actually be examining these other entities' budgets and actively advocating with them on behalf of Topekans regarding their own budgeting?
No, it was very similar to what I'm proposing we do. It's just a message from this body that as they go through their budget process, as they look at what money their projections say based on valuations and other factors, I mean, even things like sales tax, inflation is awful and it's going to have a huge budget impact to us. But the reality of inflation is we collect more money sales tax when inflation goes up. That's a sad reality of inflation and the economics of that. So I'm just asking people, including us and all the entities that do a mill levy as they go through their process, to do the same thing. What are your projections over the next year or two? And if you have an opportunity to maybe take the same action, have that conversation like we're having. Is this an opportunity for us to lower a mill levy? And if they say no, they move on. And if they say yes, then great. Maybe that's some more tax relief for people. That's the only intent of that.
Just in terms of a comment then, as I was last week, I'm still troubled about us taking I understand your motivation, just troubled about it right now, because the other fact that we know is that wage increases follow, the inflation and the additional costs for people. And so we're going to have a hard job this year. We're working hard on the CIP right now and wanting to get things out of the bonding queue into the operating budget queue so that we're saving 40% a year on those. That can be a little bit of a brain scramble for people to try and follow what we're doing when we do things like that. But I hope that we don't lose the perspective of looking long-term, not only at minimizing what our water rate increases would be, but how to reduce long-term some expenses by making sure that this year might be a once-in-a-lifetime chance, or certainly once-in-a-career chance for any of us to make some of these shifts that would mean so much to our children and grandchildren. So I hope, that I'm always the budget hawk looking at this, so that's not different for me, but I hope we can stay on track with really looking clearly at what our options are in the best long-term for our citizens as we have these discussions. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is for Attorney Amanda Stanley. Are you there, Amanda?
I am.
Good to see you. Am I correct, you don't vote on the mill levy? We don't vote on the mill levy?
Well, last year the legislature made it a little weird with revenue neutral rate and injecting mill levies into it. So technically, yes, you vote on a total dollar amount and then the county clerk converts that to a mill levy. However, now as a city, we also have to vote on a mill levy under the revenue neutral rate. So now they make us do both and it's real confusing.
I didn't think we voted on the mill levy, and I thought that the budget, we set the budget, and then the mill levy is calculated based on the budget that we adopt. So if that's the case, is that correct? I see you shaking your,
That was correct up until last year with the revenue neutral rate, and then we added another step in there where now the state legislature requires us to also vote on a proposed mill levy in addition to what you're talking about. So that was a change last year under state law.
so if that's the case, oh goodness, if that's the case, then we need to adopt a budget and decrease our spending by a mill, is that correct? You're saying it's different now with the,
So now we have until September with the revenue neutral rate to adopt the final budget. But as part of that, by June, you have to tell the state legislature whether or not, or the state, not the legislature, the public as a whole, what your proposed mill levy is going to be. And it's now, we do both. So yeah, in June, we have to say a proposed mill levy, and then we vote on the final budget, which is converted back to a mill levy by the county clerk in September. And I know that's very confusing.
it is very confusing, and, you know, Spencer, I would like to see us pull this item for more discussion, because now I'm totally confused. I'm glad Amanda has it right. She's shaking her head. She's really trying to explain it to us, but I would really like to see us pull this item and put it on as a non-action item. I'll make that motion.
I have a motion to pull this item from the agenda and move it to a non-action item. Is there a date that you are looking at for us to consider this discussion again as a non-action item?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't see the urgency of this unless Spencer can correct me, but I don't see the urgency of this, but it does seem like there's some confusion here, and I want to make sure that I know what I'm voting on. If he wants to go ahead with it, I will probably be voting, I will abstain because I don't know what the hell I'm voting on. Okay. Because I've been told a couple of different things. I'd like to sit down with Mr. Wade and take where Mr. Miller has pointed out in our budget book to see that, to get a clear understanding. Because I know things are different now, but I just want to make sure that I know what I'm voting on. So I'll make that motion. City manager, he can put that on the agenda as he sees fit, and that'll be my motion.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman. I didn't mean to imply any immediacy. I just wanted to make sure that you included any additional information that you might have with regards to getting this back before us. But yeah, I'm fine. We have a motion and a second.
I don't know what our agendas look like, so I don't know
Understood.
the urgency of it, and Spencer can tell us, or I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Okay. We have, if the clerk would read the motion and the second, so that we're clear on what we're voting.
Mayor, I did not catch the second.
Okay. The second is Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. The motion that I have from Councilmember Ortiz is to move this item to a non-action item at a future determined date, a date to be to be determined in the future.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I will
Deputy
just
Mayor?
point out the irony of moving a resolution about discussing what the impact of a reduced mill levy would be to a non-action item so we can get more information on what the reduction of a mill levy would look like. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Valdivia Alcala.
Now, come on now. Don't be making me trying to feel dumb here. We don't need to be rushing this, but, you know, you guys can vote for it. We just put into that we had questions, so that is it. Thank you, Mayor.
Further discussion, comment? Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. I will tell you, I'm in favor of keeping this on tonight and making it an action item. And the reason being is, I particularly like that this resolution sends this to other taxing authorities in Topeka and in Shawnee County, I should say. And I'm a little concerned. I mean, we have people always come, it seems like, call us and show up for our meetings. I don't know, these other groups are kind of a little bit, they can be a little more difficult to access, I guess. They meet on weekdays at different times and stuff. So I'd like as soon as possible to get this out to these other organizations. And so for that reason, I'm in favor of passing this tonight. And I guess in simple terms, as it stands right now, if it really is 13.5%, and Councilman Dover made a great point last week that commercial properties, commercial and industrial, actually make up a pretty good chunk of that property tax. And we don't know yet what the delta is on those properties right now from last year. So it might be really, it increased by 10% or something. But my bottom line is you guys maybe heard me say, there's no reason government should grow faster than inflation. Government should not be growing faster than inflation. And one of the things is government can cause inflation, and frankly, I think the federal government did cause this inflation by all the money they sent out over the last few years. People didn't need the stimulus payments, got stimulus payments, and you had just a ton of money awash in the system, and that created this inflation. But my point being, I think we're going to exceed. I'm going to vote in favor of exceeding revenue neutral, but I'm not going to be in favor of raising our taxes 13.5%. So I am in favor of this resolution, and for that reason, I won't support moving it. And again, this does not force us to do this. This just says that we're going to take a hard look at it. It's more of a policy statement, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councilwoman Nager. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilman Emerson. This is just a commitment as far as what I have understood it to be, and you can nod and shake your head as needed. This is a commitment to, as a governing body, to be responsible with the burden that we are putting on our citizens and making sure that we are using those funds in the most prudent way possible. That we are not just riding the wave of those increases and saying, okay, we will also go ahead and use that, but making sure that we are being mindful, that we're doing the investigation and we're being as responsible as we need to be with our money, with our neighbors' money. And for that same reason, I don't support making it a non-action item, and I would support approving it tonight because it's a promise to our constituents that we are being responsible with our resources. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. I don't want to echo what the last two council members have said. I feel the same. The two things that I do know is that this gives us the opportunity to evaluate it. And I do know for certain, even if we were to move forward, I do know it does not raise taxes or the mill levy. That being said, I am going to actually go back and rewatch the meeting so I can re-listen to Mr. Miller's comments, quite frankly. I worked with him on different projects that he's been involved in the past, and I will say this, I don't mind saying it, he's a hell of a lot smarter than I am, which doesn't say much for you, I will tell you that. But I do support moving forward on this to give us the opportunity. Mr. Miller brought up some topics that if he would indulge me, hopefully, maybe in the next few weeks, we could have lunch and visit. I would like to do that and learn some more. But as far as moving forward tonight, I do think it does send a message, besides the fact that we are willing to take a look at this. We're asking the other entities to look at it. And I've always been a proponent of reduced spending. Everybody knows that. So that's kind of my position on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Kell.
I agree with what the last few council members have said. I think what it's going to do is open up the discussion for us to learn what we don't know right now with all this terminology, money, where it's coming from, revenue, expenditures, all that, and we can really take a hard look at all the numbers, understand what some of the terms are going, what you know, as the deputy mayor said, you know, kind of how the state's kind of handcuffing us in certain areas and restructuring things a little bit, that we all can sit down and talk and learn what's going on around us so we can at least cut wasteful spending. That's the big thing I'm about, is what we can view as wasteful spending, and see how we can help our citizens by lowering anything we can lower, and take a look at everything, a hard look as a group, and ask all the questions we need to ask.
Councilman Dober.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to offer a substitute motion, which on line 24 of this resolution would remove the last 4 words, lowering its mill levy, and substitute the phrase, reduce the budget that is funded by property tax.
Are you asking to, submit a substitute motion?
Substitute motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Point of order? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering, Councilman Dober, would you mind just repeating that again, please?
Certainly. Let me
Read it in. Yes. Yeah.
let me talk in general terms. We're talking about lowering the current language says budget discussions. We'll consider budget discussions of lowering its mill levy. As has been pointed out, our revenue is comprised of a number of different sources. General fund is both property tax and sales tax. So, you know, if we're serious about this, let's not talk about mill levy. Let's talk about lowering the portion of our budget that is funded by property tax.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I will second that for sake of discussion.
So we have a motion and a second for a substitute motion. And if the clerk would read it so that we're clear on what we're voting on.
I believe the clerk would like me to read that for you.
Okay.
The substitute motion is to amend the resolution under consideration in line 24 by replacing the words lowering its mill levy with the words lowering the portion of its budget funded by property tax.
Deputy Mayor, do you have any discussion on this?
I have discussion.
I'm processing. Go to Councilwoman Ortiz.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Spencer, you're a gentleman. I want us to look at also the resolution. It says consider. It doesn't say promise and it doesn't say commitment, and I just heard those 2 words. Says consideration. And I want us to be careful with our wording because our constituents pick up and they hear that, and that's what they focus on. But I will agree with Neil. That's what I heard, Neil. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Question for Mr. Wade, if I may. Because the sales tax revenue has increased already and people expect that to continue, then we've already changed the portion, even if we didn't do anything with the mill levy, the portion funded by property tax would reduce against the whole, the way it's going right now. Is that correct?
If I understand Councilman Dobler correctly, for your question to be correct, the rate of increase on the property tax would have to meet or exceed the increase of sales tax. And at this point, in what's projected right now for '23, the increase of property taxes is expected to be more than that of the sales tax. So if I understand his point, the portion paid by property tax would actually increase, if I understand him correctly.
Well, the issue would be whether, with the changes, where we are.
Councilman Lesser.
This is a little off the subject. I need to just take a second, honestly, to direct to the city manager.
Mike, please.
Interim city manager. I do not have any tickets. I do not have any pending charges, but I have been in 2 meetings and various phone calls with Chief Wheelis today, who I know for a fact does not feel well at all. Would it be possible that you could excuse him for the evening? There may be 2 tickets or something. Carry on.
Thank you. You know, we're moving forward here, but, you know, I'm not sure that any of us, it sounds like, are real confident of which direction we're going. Deputy Mayor?
Well, I'm confident because it's my resolution.
Okay, but it's been.
And my position on it hasn't changed. And,
Okay.
and I appreciate, and if you want to vote on the change, that's fine. I'll go back to the whole walk and chew gum at the same time. My intent, partly and why it's worded that way, was to make sure that we could, if we had the opportunity to provide actual tax relief in a lower tax bill. I don't know if the proposed language guarantees that. In other words, the proposed language guarantees that we should be doing something anyway, as Representative Miller politely pointed out to us, which is looking at our overall budget and making reductions there. But if sticking to walking and chewing gum, that doesn't mean that we may find a path that allows us to both offer actual tax bill relief to our citizens while reducing our budget in some areas that let us attack other areas of the budget and projects. So that's my concern with that language is I don't know that it actually gets us to, at the end of the day, saying that we've found a path that reduces the tax bill of our citizens. And that would be my only concern with that. So I'm going to stick with my original language. I'm going to live or die by that sword at this point, and we can go from there. But I believe there is a motion and a second on the floor.
Councilman Kelly.
I'd almost have another amendment to include mill levy, as the deputy mayor put, but also put the property tax on the back end of that, as the councilman said. So we're looking at both aspects of it in this discussion. So we're not just looking just at the mill levy. We're not just looking at property tax in a vague term. We're looking at both of them, at the same time, rather than just taking the mill levy off line 24 there. We have what the deputy mayor proposed and what the councilman has proposed.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded, and we'll move to vote on it. I would, in advance of the vote, I will say that I am appreciative of the comments that were offered with regards to this item. Coming to this meeting this evening, I felt I was comfortable with the resolution as proposed by the deputy mayor. Again, I stress that this commits us to nothing. It does encourage us to be thoughtful, considerate, and get into the seriousness of what has been brought to our attention. I think that has always been our intent. So to wordsmith it to a point where, for me, I think it's maybe a little more than necessary. I know that I will not support removing it from the agenda, and right now, I think our motion is to amend it and vote on that amendment. I don't know that it makes that much a difference to me. I would like to get back to the original proposal as given by the deputy mayor. So if you would repeat our amended vote, city attorney, and we will call the roll then for our vote.
Currently, the motion on the floor is a motion to substitute the previous motion with an amendment to the resolution under consideration on line 24 by deleting the words lowering its mill levy and replacing it with lowering the portion of its budget funded by property tax.
Thank you. If the clerk would call the roll.
Council members Duncan,
No.
Lesser,
Point of order. This is Neil, we're voting on yay.
Mayor Padilla,
No.
Council members Heller,
No.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Reluctantly, no.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
No?
Dobler,
Yes.
we have 5 voting yes and 5 voting no.
The motion fails. So you're back on the original resolution.
And we had a motion, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve the original resolution.
Second.
Sylvia's.
Councilwoman Ortiz, are you seconding? Okay, okay.
Second.
I just had a question. So that kicked mine out, Amanda? Are we back on that?
No, sorry.
Motion?
No, sorry, I was about to clarify. So because the substitute motion fails, you're back on Councilwoman Ortiz's motion, which
Thank
is to
you,
postpone.
thank you.
Okay. To move it to a non-action item?
Correct. Another substitute motion is in order, if that's what you were attempting.
No, I didn't, I
Yep.
thought the substitute. My fault.
So we're back to the motion by Councilwoman Ortiz to remove it from an action item, to move it to a non-action item, to be placed on the agenda at a future date.
And as a point of clarification, under your rules, you do need to say a date within the next 6 months, which would be after budget season, but.
Well, within 6 months. Did you hear that, Councilwoman Ortiz?
I did. City manager, can we get it on the second week of, the second meeting in May?
Yes, ma'am, whatever meeting you would like to have it on.
Do it on the second meeting, so we have plenty of time for everybody to get themselves together. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on this current motion to move it to a non-action item? Seeing none, if the clerk would call the roll.
Councilmember Lesser,
No.
Mayor Padilla,
No.
Councilmembers Heller,
No.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
No.
Kell,
No.
Nager,
No?
Dobler,
No.
Duncan.
No.
We have 2 voting in favor.
So the motion fails, so you're back on the original.
Back on the original motion. Motion has been made to approve. Who is the second? Councilman Emerson. Okay, we're voting on the original motion. When you're ready, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Heller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
No.
Ortiz,
I will abstain because I don't understand this.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser.
Yes.
We have 8 voting yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. I appreciate all the discussion. I still think that we'll have a lot of discussion as we move forward to make it even clearer, but I appreciate the body in their comments. We'll move on to agenda item number 7, the non-action items.
Item 7A is a discussion of the proposed 2023 through 2032 capital improvement plan and 2023 through 2025 capital improvement budget.
City Manager.
Mayor, tonight we continue the discussion on the CIP budget. We have received questions over the last couple of weeks, and I know that Finance Director, Mr. Wade, has provided some answers. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Wade to continue this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. On page 64 of your book, and I know most of you don't have the book with you, but if on page 64 of your book is a project for South Topeka, 15th to 21st Street. The project as it exists right now is set to begin design in 2026, construction in 2027. It is the opinion that we need to accelerate that project. That project is currently countywide half-cent sales tax, and so we are looking at finance opportunities as a way to accelerate the intersection of 21st and Topeka. We'll have a proposal for you the first week of May, but please know that there is some consideration or some concern about the condition of that intersection, and so we're looking for ways to accelerate that. Councilwoman Hiller last week asked about reserve balances in some of our program areas, our annual program areas for the CIP. We've done some investigation on those throughout this week. We're having some conversations with the city manager about the possibility of putting those on hold for a year so that there would be the opportunity to catch up, if you will. So no new expenses in -- but rather spend the balance of 22 and 23 spending down those balances. We'll have a recommendation for you the first week of May on that also.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you for that. My book is marked, so you told us something about working on the 21st and Topeka intersection when we first briefed. Is there a possibility that there is enough in the countywide sales tax fund to cover that project?
There is not for the additional work that needs to be done on it. There's about an additional $1.3 to $1.4 million of additional work. We do not, at this point in time, do not believe the countywide sales tax can cover it.
Okay, because by midterm, the first time around, we did have a little bit of predicted balance, so just asking.
The timing on it
Okay,
doesn't work.
okay, thank you, Mayor.
Further questions, Mr. Wade? Deputy Mayor.
I asked this a while back. I sort of got an answer. I don't expect an answer tonight, but if we could put it on the list. Could we please get an accounting of the current reserve fund balances for utilities? Because the last time I made that request, I got a number, but it conflicted with another number, which conflicted with another number, and it kind of turned into a rabbit hole that we didn't complete. So if we could just get the current reserve fund balance for utilities, that would be great.
We have that. I'll get it to you.
Thank you.
Further questions from Mr. Wade? Let me make sure I catch everybody. All right. More in your presentation, Steve, or?
No, sir.
Okay.
Did he hand it out, Paul Quincy? I'm sorry, City Hall?
I'm sorry?
If we could
Councilwoman
ask,
Hiller?
we have a handout about City Hall, and there had been a lot of questions about that. I wondered if we could have a walkthrough.
Surely. City Manager?
Yeah, late this afternoon, you were provided with a document. One of the things that Councilman Dobler had asked for was a kind of breakdown of where the projects for City Hall renovation, where those dollars are spent and all that. And so, can I see that a second?
Sure. He has some extras, too.
So what we have was a breakdown of the original budgeted project was $8.2 million. And so expenditures that have included, there's a breakdown of that, chillers, security updates, masonry repairs, general design fees, so on and so forth as you go through, with a remaining budget of $2.5 million. And of that $2.5 million, I've authorized the allocation of $1 million to do the survey or the evaluation scope and work and all that for HVAC for the municipal building, both TPAC and the city side. And so with that, when you look at the estimated cost, we are the current request of $10.25 million for HVAC for City Hall and TPAC. And then we're in line to get tax credits back of about 3.7. So the total cost would be 6.5 is the estimate for HVAC for both city and TPAC. But we need the 10.25 because we can't get the tax credits until we spend the dollars. So.
Questions?
Well,
Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you. And I'll defer to others who are looking at this. This is fresh for me, but what this says is we've already spent first $500,000 on design fees, and then another $200,000 for additional design work for the elevator, and I'm not sure what MEP is, but anyway. And then even another $140,000 in planning out of this 8.2. So almost $1 million. And I know that they had done the planning for the HVAC system at least through City Hall. So I can't understand, I need help understanding why we would spend another $1 million on design if it was done already.
TPAC was not done. We have not done any study. There's not been any work per se on the TPAC side. Now, that's not saying we're going to spend $1 million. It's just I'm allocating the $1 million that we have it there so we can make it happen. If we don't spend $1 million, that's great. But one of the things that I like to do is make sure I have enough money to do whatever I need to do and not have to come back, request more, or move more dollars.
Is there a sense that what we did for City Hall is not what we should have done?
What was that again?
Is that the HVAC plan, I mean, we all got a chance, those of us who were around, got a chance to see a full set of plans that was design plans, and they had worked the whole HVAC system for City Hall. That was fundamental to it, and then they worked some remodeling and redesign around that. But it was, as far as I know, totally thought through as well as costed out. So I guess I feel like we're starting over, and that was the second round of engineering on that building anyway. So I'm troubled. I just need help with why we would need to do it again.
What we have to do, we don't have to do the City Hall side again. We have to do the TPAC side because it was not done. it's a dual system. And so TPAC is kind of on its own system, whereas City Hall is on its own system. And so when we talk about a redundant system, which was put in place with 3 chillers and that, those chillers are wearing out. But to replace them adequately, we really need to know what needs to be done to sufficiently provide HVAC system to the TPAC side of the building.
So we need $1 million to do that?
Well, again,
Or up to?
we don't have any idea how much it's going to really cost. And that's what I'm saying. We have 2.8 million left in the City Hall renovation dollar. And so instead of looking for dollars anywhere else, I want to make sure that we have adequate funds to be able to get that done. And so $1 million is what I want to make sure I have. And again, if we don't spend $1 million, then those dollars can be spent elsewhere.
Last question.
Okay.
There has been some remodeling done to spaces in City Hall in recent years. Looking at this, it does not appear that those remodelings were paid for out of this money. Were they paid for otherwise, or where did that money come from?
The remodels that have taken place recently have come out of the 8.2.
Okay.
Questions from other body members? Okay. Anything else with regards to the detail provided here? Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you. I know you inherited it.
I'm looking for the public comment here. I'm going to say, but he's gone. Mr. Ledbetter had signed up. Probably went coffee a bit. Walked out together. So we have no public comment. And if no one signed up, we move on to announcements, if the city clerk would read.
Mayor, I have no agenda for next week.
Move on to announcements from council members. Councilmember Valdivia Alcala. Yeah, you will be.
You
For the
always
month.
are when you're it.
For the-
You can play new guy.
You got the
I've
month.
been tagged, okay. Actually, I don't have any announcements. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz. Councilman Emerson.
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilman Kell.
Well, I guess I gotta kick it off. This Friday is Earth Day. Next Friday is Arbor Day. And it's one of those things that we all need to take a look at what we do. We all, at least in my generation, remember the turtle with the soda wrap around it, the ring. So, that's still gets me today why I cut all those up. So just take a look at your, what's going on with the world, with the environment. Look at the wildfires, see where you can plant a tree, construction, things like that, and just take some time on this Friday and next Friday to look at Earth Day and Arbor Day.
Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the spirit of Councilman Kell's announcement, this is also the last, on average, the last frost day for Topeka, Kansas, but this year might be a little bit different. So if you're a gardener, now is a great time to really get out there and plant those plants that cannot be frozen. There are some big changes that happened in District 6 this last week. Washburn President Jerry Farley announced his retirement as of September 30th after a 25-year tenure at Washburn University, and we really appreciate what he and his family have done for the school and for our community. especially with the acquisition of Washburn Tech. That has changed a lot of people's lives and given people a lot of upward mobility. So we're very appreciative of that as a community. And Clark Duffy, who served for 8 years on the governing body as the representative for District 6 and a year as deputy mayor, passed away on Sunday.
Oh, I did not know that.
Mr. Duffy had always been, and his wife Susan currently, have been active members of their community, from being deeply involved at the NIA level in College Hill to working under multiple governors at the state. And our community has definitely benefited from Mr. Duffy's service. I'd like to share my gratitude and my condolences with Susan, Aaron, Brenna, Colin, and I would also like to share what they published as his recipe for life. Be a lifelong learner, travel, be an ethical leader, have passion for what you do, and do what you know. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate you making that up. A lot of people still didn't know. Councilman Dobler.
Nothing, Mayor, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know, I know some of us, I will next week be in Destination Northwest Arkansas, I believe with several other council members. Don't worry, taxpayers, we're not spending your money. It's either ours or the partnership, so that's okay. But finally, after a few years, the intercity visits. This one's a joint one with the city of Lawrence down to Bentonville and surrounding areas. So we will see what we can learn and steal from their area that's working and bring it back here to Topeka. And this will be my third one of these. I haven't been on one since I was an elected official because they stopped them due to COVID, but I went on a couple before. They've always been fascinating, so just let people know that's where some of us will be next week. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Lesser. Thank you, sir. Councilman Hiller.
I have something to read and share as well. I think most people know that the African American Travel Conference was here last week. And it went really well, and they did a wrap-up concert that was supported by Core First Bank with an entertainer named Jelly Rose at the Jayhawk Theater. And there was a message sent to the Jayhawk, but it reflects on the whole community after that happened. I really wanted to take a moment to thank you. Oh, and I should mention that the mayor also accompanied them on a number of stops, I think, but was at the Jelly Rose concert and was very gracious in welcoming them. The statement was, I really wanted to take a moment to thank you for bringing it during the African American Travel Conference. Core First sponsorship of the Jelly Rose concert went a long way to show that Topeka is a music destination. We heard so many compliments on the show, and the best one I heard is that Topeka, quote, spoke to me, which I consider a very high compliment because this concert was deliberate and on point. Another point made very often was how accommodating, considerate, and just nice the people of Topeka are. It was nice to hear and all of these comments could not have been possible without the work from all of you. That was nice to share.
Thank you.
That's it, thank you.
We'll move on now. There is a need to have an executive session. If the city attorney would read, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 20 minutes to discuss matters related to an individual employee pursuant to KSA 754319B1. The open meeting will resume in city council chambers. The following staff may be needed to assist the governing body in its deliberations: interim city manager Cochran and any other staff he deems necessary.
Entertain a motion. Have a motion by Councilwoman Nager, second by Councilman Kell. All those in favor say aye.
Have to say it. Just
Those opposed?
have to say it.
Councilwoman Ortiz, noted. No. We will adjourn into executive session after a 10-minute recess.
All right, well, we'll see who has the quicker.
Okay, we're coming out of our executive session. Discussion has been held. We've come out of our executive session. No action has been taken. No further business comes before this body. I close this meeting.